Hello, everyone, and welcome to Field Notes. My name is Russ Almaraz, and I am the Regional GIS Specialist in Davis, California, and the Field Notes Regional Representative for the Southwest Soil Survey region. As a regional representative, I serve on the Field Notes Review Committee. The Review Committee solicits and selects topics for each webinar. We have selected one exciting topic for today's live event, but first, let's go over a few housekeeping rules. This is a Microsoft Live event, not a Teams meeting, which means you are joining today's webinar in listen-only mode. We encourage you to ask questions at any time using the Q&A panel. The Q&A panel should open by default. However, if for some reason your Q&A panel is not open, simply click on the question mark icon located in the upper right side of your screen. For closed captions, turn on the live caption button located in the lower right corner. Today's session is being recorded. Recorded sessions are available in Teams, on the Field Notes channel, and the Soil and Plant Science Division's YouTube channel. Again, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed today's session. With that, I'd like to turn it over to moderator Neil Dominy to tell you a little more about today's webinar. Take it away, Neil.
All right, thank you, Russell. Just a quick note before we get into the topic, please save the date for May 9th. That's the next Field Notes webinar, so please put that down on your calendar today so you do not forget. This will be my last Field Notes moderating. I am currently the Assistant Acting Director at the National Soil Survey Center, and this is my last week on the job. It's been a privilege to host these with the team, and I've learned through these opportunities. It's amazing to see the things and projects that are being worked out in the field. And today's topic, I was very surprised and appreciated the scenic pictures that I've already seen from the presentation. So I'm super stoked to put this presentation out here for everybody, and I'm excited to welcome it. The topic today is Alaska Tough Digs, Winter and Wilderness Field Work. Phil Barber from the Homer, Alaska office is going to take us through the presentation. When you're ready, Phil, take it away.
Thank you very much, Neil and Russell. Let me get this up there. And just making sure everyone can see that.
Looks great.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Phil Barber, and I'm an ecologist in the Homer, Alaska Soil Survey Office. First, a little bit about myself. I'm originally from New York. I started with NRCS as a seasonal biotech in the Fairbanks, Alaska office, and spent 6 months surveying the Yukon Flats, the White Mountains, and Kodiak Island, and entering data into NRCS. I was subsequently hired as the Homer ecologist, and I've continued to work on projects across the state and enter data into NRCS. The Homer MLRA office is primarily responsible for projects in Southwest and Western Alaska, covering roughly 140 million acres across 11 MLRAs. The Homer staff is comprised of 4 soil scientists, Steph Schmidt, Michael Singer, Claire Benton, and Abby Clapp, and myself. Today, I'll be talking about tough digs in Alaska. Accessing the Alaska front and backcountry is a special part of conducting fieldwork here, but is often challenging. I'll be using the Alaska project shared in the 2023 Soils Planner to describe part of what makes tough digs in Alaska. So Alaska tough digs, what makes a tough dig? I imagine that this would be answered differently for everyone in our division based on their own experiences. Fieldwork throughout our different regions present unique challenges. For me, I can kind of boil down the answer here to 3 factors. First is access to the project site. Transportation, even on the road system, is not always easy, and careful planning and training are needed to access many parts of our state. Site conditions certainly contribute to a tough dig. How is the weather in the project area? Are the individual sample points on steep, ponded, or exposed landforms? What wildlife is around? Bears usually come to mind when you mention Alaska wildlife, for obvious reasons, but moose can be just as dangerous. Then the actual digging. Are you working in the permafrost or discontinuous permafrost zones? How deep is your seasonal frost? Traversing the alpine to the floodplains in one day exposes one to all variety of soil types. And finally, unforeseen challenges. What happens when you fly over your remote campground and it's still under 10 feet of late spring snow? What happens when your equipment malfunctions or someone is injured or unexpected weather comes in? It's times like this where the ability to be flexible and think calmly come into play. We attend trainings as a team, so when we're out in the field, we're able to tackle these issues together. So Alaska is featured in the January and April pages of the 2023 Soils Planner. January describes two winter projects, which are actually pretty rare for us. April features a more typical initial survey. The project locations we'll be visiting today include Healy, Utqiagvik, and Togiak National Wildlife Refuge. So Healy, which is that red star there, is right along the northern boundary of Denali National Park. It's in MLRA 228, the interior Alaska mountains. The project site is located, or was located, in a glaciated high elevation valley of the Alaska Range. And Healy is on ancestral native Tanana and Dene land. Utqiagvik is Alaska's most northern inhabited village, formerly known as Barrow. It's in MLRA 246, the Arctic Coastal Plains, and is on ancestral Inupiat land. And Togiak National Wildlife Refuge, the Blue Star, is a 4 million acre refuge in southwest Alaska. It is in MLRA 237, the Auckland Mountains, and it is located on ancestral Yupik land. The black dots represent the 3 Alaska MLRA offices, which kind of gives an idea of the distances traveled to reach our project areas. So Homer, Wasilla, and Fairbanks are all on the road system. The yellow star and the blue star are not. The red star is on the Parks Highway. So to start, we'll start with the January page. So the Alaska region as a whole, we do not schedule winter fieldwork for initial surveys for obvious reasons. Our work in Healy and Utqiagvik began with a TSS request to help the National Ecological Observatory Network. We were tasked to collect and describe soils at pre-selected sites. NEON already has vegetation monitoring in place, so we could sample in the winter. This winter access can be easier in remote areas when you're able to cross the snow rather than dealing with shrubby vegetation and boggy areas. So like the tussock tundra in the north, it's a lot easier to cross on a snow machine. Site access was relatively easy compared to other projects. As I said, Healy is along the road system, and we used the well-established Stampede Trail to access the site. This popular trail was made famous in the book Into the Wild by John Krakauer. For the Utqiagvik trip, our team took a scheduled flight from Fairbanks to the northern coast. First, though, before headed out, we needed to conduct some pre-planning and attend some specialty training. So planning was important as the conditions were different than our usual fieldwork. The project leads were responsible for planning transportation logistics and sharing site information and conditions with the field staff before arrival. All Alaska staff stays current with wilderness first aid, bear safety, and shotgun training. We also take specialty training when projects demand. So for these winter projects, a few of us took a winter survival course. This course was very hands-on. I was the lucky person to simulate losing a boot in a river, and then had spent a full day in a makeshift boot made up of a snow machine seat insulation, a carpet square, and a plastic bag. So that's myself and a coworker, Josh Paul, on the right there in our garbage bag jackets. So it actually worked better than expected. My foot stayed pretty warm. We also had to make and eat what can only be described as the most tepid meal of ramen using melted snow and our body heat. But it did put us in a good frame set to be able to tackle any problems or issues we might run into out there. Finally, we familiarized ourselves with winter travel vehicles, including snow machines and our muddocks. And then we purchased PPE to make it through the -40-degree days. So that include gloves, boots, hats, layers. And then we did not forget sunscreen and sunglasses as well. What am I looking at here? Okay, so we spent the beginning of each field hitch with a project overview from the project lead, as I said. So we had field expectations, emergency contacts, etc. Safety briefings were provided for everyone who hadn't worked around snow machines or the treaded muddocks. For Healy, we met in Wasilla before caravanning up the Parks Highway. In Utqiagvik, Neon provided us an orientation about local conditions and regulations. This meeting was actually cut short when our liaison had to run out onto the sea ice because her brother had just captained a successful whale hunt. So that was pretty interesting to see her have to run out the door. But these whale hunts are very much a community activity. So we saw everyone just running out, and is pretty neat to see. So once we were on site, we spent the first days sampling as one group before splitting into smaller, more efficient teams the following days. Field conditions were pretty much what we expected, blinding sun and impressively cold. We did work through one day of whiteout conditions there in the top right. The coastal plains outside Utqiagvik were absolutely mesmerizing. It's impossible often to tell where the land and the ocean meet, and very easy to get turned around. It's completely flat, no trees, no land markers. So we always worked in pairs and groups, so you were never alone out there. We didn't have to worry about much wildlife at either location. We witnessed the Denali National Park dog sled teams around Healy. That was cool. The caribou were grazing out in the lichen all around Utqiagvik, but they didn't pay us any heed. We were warned about polar bears on the northern coast, but they were busy out on the sea ice, and so we didn't have any encounters there. Soil sampling. This work produced some unique challenges. Our predetermined sampling locations were difficult to find. We had GPS points, but they were only accurate to 10 to 15 feet. The Utqiagvik points were marked by a wooden stake buried under 2 to 4 feet of wind-packed snow. So the stakes made the data more accurate, but we actually had to dig out over 1,000 square feet of snow just to find the 1 to 2 inches of stake that's protruding from the frozen surface. So that's that digging out in that top right. Soil cores were collected with Cypri augers. They were super efficient, very efficient on the coastal plain, but we did have problems with them catching cryoturbated gravels around Healy. We also carried 50-pound bags of sand to fill in the excavated holes. Walking in snowshoes over uneven terrain with these bags was very slow and difficult. At Healy, we were able to store the cores in a trailer and bring them back to Wasilla for describing. We couldn't fly the cores out of Utqiagvik, so we actually finished soil descriptions and taxonomy on a truck bed as the sunset and the wind chill dropped below -30. The Healy soils were primarily histoturbels and fibricels, and Utqiagvik soils were mostly aquaturbels and histoturbels. So once fieldwork was completed for these projects, the staff, we all returned to our respective offices to continue winter work for our own surveys and begin planning for the following summer field season. I should mention that this was very much an all hands on deck opportunity to go out. They needed pretty much more bodies. So you might ask, why is the ecologist going out here? We just needed staff. We needed people to go out and help form these teams. So I was always partnered with a soil scientist, and it did help to do all the describing as a group back at the truck rather than out in the field. So now we will switch a little to initial survey. So this is moving to the April calendar page, which describes a more typical initial survey field hitch. So there are challenges built into every Alaska field season. First, we're restricted by a short growing season. So fieldwork usually begins in early June and wraps up by mid-September. We can expand that a little bit depending where we are, but that's usually our window. And there's a lot to do in that little window. Second, accessing project areas, even those on the road system, require pre-planning and training. Having a tech team review, travel logistics figured out, and a contingency plan in place well before heading out is needed to ensure a successful field hitch. The yellow stars roughly show the 5 survey locations planned for this coming summer. So from north to south, we will be looking at the North Slope again. Out there in the west is the Nulato Hills, which is the Homer office. So I'll be out there for 2 months. The Copper River Valley, most to the east there, that's Wasilla's project. And then we've got Lake Iliamna, which is across the Cook Inlet from Homer, and the Aleutian Islands down in the southwest. And then staffing with currently we have 12 MLRA staff in Alaska. So it takes extra planning to make sure the staffing needs for every project are met. We've been incredibly fortunate to have fantastic SPSD details spend their summer with us the past few years. We currently have 5 to 7 details planning to help us this summer. And we also have a very efficient and great working relationship with our conservation districts, who have agreed to loan out their experts to help us many times. And so we keep, we are able to get all our staff positions filled in these ways. So the April Soils Planner page details the Togiak National Wildlife Refuge initial survey. This survey was based out of the Homer office. The NRCS entered into an MOU with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to provide soil maps and ecological site descriptions for Togiak. This refuge is in southwest Alaska and is part of MLRA 237, the Auckland Mountains. Outside of the survey area, we also provided survey products for the native village of Togiak, which allowed the conservation staff to expand their services to this area. Our ability to use Togiak Village as a jump-off base was key to the success of this project, and that's kind of standard up here. We've been, the Homer office has been working on the Nulato Hills project for several years, so we've been working out of Unalakleet in Norton Sound, which is just a fantastic village, fantastic people, probably my favorite village. And we've also expanded to a little further north into Koyuk, which is a smaller village, but closer to the northern reaches of our survey area. So for Togiak, it's a remote project, and we use parts of 4 field seasons to collect data to map it. So there were several challenges to pulling off survey work on this project area. This project was off the road system, so staff and equipment were first flown to Dillingham and then on to either Togiak Village or to remote camps via float plane. Finding an OAS-approved float plane pilot can be difficult, especially with all of the other federal agencies competing for the same services. So this must be planned well in advance. The northern parts of the survey actually were designated wilderness, so we couldn't use helicopters. So for the trip I'll be focusing on today, we flew to Upper Togiak Lake via float plane and rafted the Togiak River to the lower end of Togiak Lake. So that's that blue star in the top left is Upper Togiak Lake, and then we ended up at our pickup spot down at Togiak Lake on the south end. Wildlife was everywhere. Bears were attracted to the summer salmon run, and we frequently crossed paths with them. Moose were overly protective of their calves because they were also at the water, using the floodplains for willow. So we had bear, moose, porcupines come through our camp at one point or another during this one hitch. Communication was key. Every team of 2 carries a radio and a stat phone. We used morning meetings to keep everyone on the same page about where each team would be and shared planned meetup times and locations. As with the winter work, making sure everyone has the proper training and PPE is essential to remote work. As I mentioned, our standard training includes wilderness first aid, bear safety, and shotgun certification. River work is a different kind of fun that comes with its own set of challenges. To prepare, we attended 3 days of swift water rescue training on the glacial Matanuska River, and we have plans to do that again this year. The rafts restricted the amount of gear, including tools, food, and clothing that we could bring as a group. So it was important that everyone plan as a group and stick to the limitations before leaving our home offices. Planning and pre-mapping were critical to ensuring that we used our limited time field efficiently. Starting your days at a river camp means the first part of the day is spent crossing the dense expanse of willow floodplains to reach the surrounding hill and mountain map units. Pre-planning was key to structuring that trip, those days and our time. Unfortunately, things pop up. It's difficult to plan for new beaver dams, and sometimes you just end up having to get wet, as seen. That's Nathan Perry, who's now in Montana, crossing a beaver pond, using a shovel to kind of gauge the depth. So in Alaska, we typically take advantage of the long daylight hours and work long days to make the most of our limited field season. River field hitch days are particularly long. On top of running daily traverses, on travel days, we also break down camp, move down river, and set up camp. And it requires that everyone chip in. You couldn't afford to really wait around to be told what to do, as there's just too much to be done at any given time. But it does end up with some pretty cool photos. So mapping in Togiak, due to weight and space restrictions, digging instruments were limited to sharpshooters and collapsible augers. Other mandatory gear that we carry include a shotgun, bear spray, first aid kits, sat phone, and radios, along with food and any other gear needed to do the job on the day-to-day. Carrying everything across floodplains and terraces was draining. These are also prime breeding grounds for mosquitoes, which are just horrendous out there. I feel like photos can sometimes give a poor representation of the actual field conditions. Sliding down a scree slope on the left there looks and it is amazing. But I vividly remember the long hot trek through the willow and alder that we needed to do just to reach the alpine from our lakeshore camp. River rafting is fun, but rowing a heavy flat raft across a lake is murder on the hands and shoulders. So the photos look cool. It's kind of hard to take a bad photo, but it's definitely tough going day in, day out. So I just wanted to share some of the Togiak soil veg correlations. There were plenty of them out there. These are pretty basic, but I think they show a slice of the diversity that's present out there. We've got a sedge organic depression on the left, dense alder mountain backslope in the middle, and an alpine dwarf scrub and lichen summit on the right. The main soil orders we came across were endosols, inceptisols, gellisols, and spodosols. I believe I do have one more page of this. So here we have a willow graminoid floodplain on the left, and then on the right we have a willow scrub drainage way in the subalpine. So I mentioned the unforeseen challenges. So these are situations that put our training to the test. In my experience, the three hardest things to plan for are unexpected weather, field injuries, and simple bad luck. We experienced a massive storm at the end of our Togiak float. We buckled down camp and went to bed expecting the float plane to arrive the following morning. It didn't arrive for 3 days. We were thankful to have planned for this with extra food, but our group tent was destroyed, our water filters were destroyed, and 2 of the 6 personal tents were absolutely destroyed. So it taught us a little bit about our gear and what to expect when weather pulls in. And that storm did set us up with a absolutely stunning sunset the night before. So injuries happen. I think anyone who's been in the field is aware of that. A pulled back, a slip knife, a twig in the eye, a foot injury, they can all derail field plans. When this happens, just that, everyone pitches in. If someone needs to leave the field, we have a system in place to get them out. We almost always have a replacement team member standing by to come out as soon as possible as well. So for this reason, Alaska keeps an all hands on deck mentality throughout the summer field season. You could very easily be working in your office one day, get a phone call, and the next day you're flying out to a remote site, with 3 hours of heads up. And then finally, sometimes things just go bad ways or sideways. They're just bad luck. The safety on a bear spray canister is torn off in a thicket and sprays you. A soil thermometer is buried in a pit and has to be revisited and dug out. A cypre auger gets frozen in the permafrost, and a jackhammer has to be flown out to retrieve it. On our rafting trip, we had a pack raft flip with someone in it. We pulled the person from the water and got them into dry clothes, and then spent the rest of the morning recovering gear from the gravel bed of a deep ice cold river. It's instances like this where patience, a cool head, and a sense of humor are important. Things will go bad, but with planning, training, and teamwork, we are able to pull off these tough digs. With that, I just want to thank you all for calling in and listening to some stories about fieldwork in Alaska. If anyone has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them now. Also, a little plug. I am the Field Notes representative for the Alaska region. So if anyone from outside Alaska has an idea about something they'd like to see presented specifically about Alaska soils, Alaska work, anything specific that you think might interest you up here, just reach out and let me know. We have a lot of people who are interested in sharing stuff up here, but it's, we're we're kind of on our own up here. So it's nice to get some feedback about what interests other folk. So thank you very much.
Hey, Phil, excellent job with the presentation. That was great. It was fun. Pictures were wonderful. Thank you so much for doing it. We'll move into a bit of a Q&A. And I have one question that I'm going to selfishly ask. Phil, I'm curious. If I was curious enough to apply for a job up in Alaska, what are the 2 main reasons in your mind of why I should apply?
Man, good question. I would say the first would be the staff you get to work up with. The staff you get to work with up here is amazing. I feel like my coworkers are fantastic. There's just, you go out into the field with them and, everyone does their job and everyone manages to make the most of what can be a grueling field work sometimes. So I'd say getting to work with the staff up here would be number one. Number two is the access to the field. We go to places that not a lot of people go. You can honestly, that's again Nathan Perry in the bottom left there. You end up on this summit and you can very easily imagine no one else has been here before, or you're pulling to river camp and it's 11:30 at night and you're in that top right picture looking at salmon in the river, like, oh, are they turned yet? Can I still eat them? So the work is intense, but everyone who's joined our team up here has done so because they enjoy the outdoors, not just on the work side, but also the personal side. So if you love being outside, you can make it through a winter up here. The summers are worth it. Yeah, staff and outdoors, I would say.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Phil.
Yep.
There's a couple other questions.
Sure.
So here's a question. I'm assuming daylight hours are even shorter in January in Alaska. How much did this impact your winter field work?
Yeah, so it's a little misleading. A good question. So our winter work is highlighted in the January calendar page, but it actually took place in March and April. It's still snowing here. I mean, I'm in the furthest south of our three offices, and I still have 2 feet of snow in my front yard. So the winter work, right now, we've got, the sun is coming up around 7:30 and setting at 9:30. So we've already got 14 hours of daylight. So yeah, there's not much, we did not do that field work in January. We waited till March, April when we had the extra daylight hours. It's still cold, still snowing, but we had the extra daylight hours to work with. So we were able to get it done.
Thank you for that, Phil.
Yeah.
Here's another one. How do you get the nice cores?
Yeah. So if you haven't seen a cypriauger before, let me see if I can. Oh, this is gonna be a little slow. So when we have permafrost soils, we're able to use what's called a cypricore. And so it's a hollow tube with teeth on the outside. And that's it there in the bottom right. So it's got teeth on the outside and a hollow tube that you put a plastic core grabber inside of. And so you can use 2 people and just auger straight down. This is on the coastal plain, so a lot of windblown luss, no gravels. It doesn't work in rocky, gravelly soils. And it just drills straight down. And then you use this tool, the core grabber on the left there. That person kneeling is over the hole and just sticks this out and pulls the core up. And you end up with a perfectly cylindrical soil core. And they're, depending on how big your extensions are, you can get pretty deep with these. We've got 2 6-foot extensions, so you can get really deep. But I wasn't joking. We have gotten them frozen in permafrost before, where if you're using it during the summer where you have water on the surface, what you end up doing is drilling down into the permafrost below the surface water, and then the water seeps in and then freezes, and then you end up with your cypricore stuck in the permafrost, and you have to dig it out and then fly in a jackhammer and hammer it out. So it's super cool. Yeah, if you haven't seen one work, I'd suggest. I don't think we're the only office with one, but they're pretty neat.
All right, here's another question that came in the chat. I have to imagine that Alaskan ecology is quite unique compared to the Great Plains or foothills ecology I'm used to. Any special Alaskan plants or plant communities that you could share about?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So like I said, I'm from New York. I got my degree in ecology from New York. I was expecting a massive change, and I did have a lot of learning to do. There's so many willows up here. It's disheartening, sometimes, but there's a lot of shared, at least between New York and Alaska, there's a lot of shared genus. There's a lot of shared kind of community types. An alpine is an alpine. The plants may differ, but you know what their life history is going to be because they're living in the same kind of conditions. Rocky soils, exposed winds, short growing season. There's a lot of cool plant communities up here. You can get out into floating sphagnum bogs where you're just walking along, in a tussock tundra, and then the tussock kind of drops out, and it's a little shrubby and more sedge, and it almost feels like you're on a boat. And next thing you know, if you were to try to dig a hole or put an auger through, you're above 40 feet of water, and so you just end up having to back out. The first time that happened was pretty unnerving. But for the most part, it's the short growing season restricts our plant diversity and species richness, I would say. But I think from the experience I've had with details and my own personal experience, you come up here and you'll find new species and different species, and but if you have any kind of even in the plains, or especially if you're in the foothills, you'll understand like why the willows are where they are, and why alder goes up this one slope, and then the alder peters out, and now it's ericaceous scrub, and now you're in a lichen tundra on the summit. Like it's there's always something to learn, for sure, and it's definitely exciting, but I don't want to make it sound like it's like a walk in the park, but it's I feel people can do this. If whoever asking this question is thinking, hey, I'm thinking about a detail, like I'm pretty sure you can do it. We've got a great staff of ecologists up here to train, that trains our details. We work pretty closely with them throughout the season. So if this question is coming from a position of wanting to detail up here, then yeah, don't let that hold you back. I will say lichens are not thought about in most of the other 49 states, and they are a big deal up here. So if you do come up, having an idea of what lichens are, and being kind of roughly pick out like the 3 groups of them, is a good starting point.
Nice. Now I'll know that, Phil. I'll work on that for my homework. There's a couple more questions here. I think a couple here are kind of fun. So
yeah, keep coming.
What kinds of clothes did you bring to be prepared for all the different weather and hikes?
Yeah, layers, lots of layers. I started out I started as a biotech, and nothing teaches you like experience. So my first 2 weeks, I was out in the White Mountains, and was actually, it's Alaska, it'll be cold. I was dying of heat. It gets so incredibly hot in interior Alaska. And I was just not ready for it. So, I had heavy long sleeve shirt on and pants, and you need them because the mosquitoes are so bad, but you need them to be light. So, I guess quickly, in the winter, boots, 2 pairs of socks, 2 pairs of thermals, snow pants, t-shirt, wool wool long sleeve undershirt, fleece shirt, hoodie, jacket, hat, 2 pairs of gloves, sunglasses, face mask, basically no skin exposed at all. And then here you can see rafting on the Togiak. Everyone's wearing rain jackets just because it gets wet on the water. So always, we always carry rain gear. And then what I typically go with is a base layer, thermal layer of wool, top and bottom, and then, hiking pants on the bottom, and a fleece up top, and a jacket, and then rain stuff. Just lots of layers. You want to maximize warmth and kind of decrease volume and weight, because if it gets hot and you're hiking a mountain, you've got to carry that extra however many pounds of clothes up the mountain. So lots of layers, and yeah, just be prepared to be stinking after 2 weeks.
Right. Thank you for that one.
Yeah.
Now, it's a 2-part question here. What is your least favorite flying/biting insect?
Ugh.
And on a more positive note, what is your favorite type of salmon?
All right. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with the king salmon. We have a personal use dip net fishery here in Homer, so I actually go with a few coworkers. We try to go every year across the bay to, it's called Chinapoot Falls, and the salmon get stuck. They can't jump up this waterfall, so they all just kind of sit there. And so you go in, and if you're an Alaska citizen up here, you can dip net 6 a day, which is, just big reds and pinks, and the reds are, well, they're both delicious. So, my favorite salmon is whatever I've got in the freezer. My least favorite biting insect is the white socks. The mosquitoes swarm. You can have competitions about who can slap the most at one time. But they're, they make a noise, and you can learn to ignore them. The white socks are flying insects that actually burrow. They're used to burrowing down through the dense hair of moose and bear and the like, and get to the skin, and they'll actually, I don't know how graphic we want to get. They'll bite into your skin and then actually create a hole in your skin and bury their head. And so if you don't catch them in time, you'll end up with like a 2-inch welt with a massive wound in the middle, and it just burns and stings. So the mosquitoes are annoying, but I'll take a mosquito bite over a white sock bite any day.
Okay, Phil, after that note, the next question is, how does someone apply for a detail to Alaska? Are they advertised on MyFPAC or somewhere else?
They do get advertised. What usually happens, though, is we have really good relationships with other regions, and the best way to make it happen is reach out to, if you want to do an ecology detail, our regional ecologist is Jamin Johansson. If you want to do a soils detail, our regional director is Jessica Linné. And Jessica's probably your best bet to get into the loop on details. You'll want to talk to your supervisor, and they'll probably want to rope in their regional director as well. But the best way is do not wait for a posting. We can reach out at this point. Now we have a good pool of folks who have been up here. We still try to get new people up here. So you can't spend 5 summers in a row coming to Alaska. I don't think your home office would appreciate that. But we do keep an ongoing list of people who are interested. And I would recommend reaching out to Jessica Lene about that. And I'm pretty sure I'm not throwing her out under the bus here with that, because she has said that in the past. But I will. I apologize if she gets a million emails now. But yeah, that's your best bet. They sometimes get posted. They usually don't. Like I said, I think we have 5 to 7 details coming up this year. I don't think any of them had to specifically apply. They went through a screening process to make sure that they were ready to do the job. But I don't think they had to submit formal applications. I could be wrong with that. I'm not in the loop.
All right. Well, thank you, Phil, for a good Q&A session there, and that empties the queue that's in front of me. So thank you so much for your time, Phil, and presenting to all of us, and thank you for all the Field Notes attendees and the Field Notes team for making this all happen. These are great opportunities. Just wanted to make sure everybody has it on the calendar for next month on May 9th to make sure that they're tuning in again to see what's up next on Field Notes. Thank you all very much and have a great day.